of the commentator or commentators are solely those of the commentators and not of CJAD 800 or Astro.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:07 on Montreal's News Talk leader, CJAD 800. Welcome to today's Entrepreneur, presented by Fuller Landau, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. I'm Dan Delmar, and joining me this week from Fuller Landau is Michael Newton. Welcome back, Michael.
Thanks, Dan.
Now, Michael is filling in for Josh Miller, our co-host here, because Josh is doing business in China, actually. He's in Hong Kong right now, and he just sent me a BBM on BlackBerry, and he wanted to share a couple of thoughts, Michael, about doing business in China, and I'll have you address this as well. He says, in looking at China's economy and investing into it, people must remember that China production is much more for itself than people think. So even if the rest of the world is crumbling, businesses here can and will still thrive. So if you have the opportunity to do a business here in China, don't miss the boat. And, well, he says you're probably already a little behind.
Yeah, I mean, certainly China's taken on a whole different perspective over the last few years as the world economy has not been so great. But somewhere between China and India, I think you're looking at some very, very heavy growth that's going on. And I think a lot of people will be very, very surprised. As a matter of fact, China probably for the first time is going to battle their own sense of inflation that they're not too used to dealing with.
So Josh will join us again for our next show. But for now, let's introduce our guest for the evening. He is the head of a company called Sterling Payment Solutions. They help retailers with streamlined payment systems. David Swade is in studio. Welcome, David.
Guys, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So tell us maybe first a little bit about your company and how you got involved in this business.
Sterling provides payment processing systems for retailers, primarily retailers and e-commerce merchants. I got into this business, started in 1999. I worked for a company called Optimal Payments, and then in 2008, had the opportunity to buy a division from Optimal, along with my partner, Harley Greenspoon, and we went out, basically took that business private.
David, took a little bit of a detour, I think, along the way. David would have potentially been the third generation in a family business. And as you know, this program is always focused on the entrepreneur and certainly on the family business environment. So we're going to let, as the hour progresses, we'll let David kind of talk about the joys of being in a family business, as well as the joys of leaving the family business and going on to something on his own.
Yeah, absolutely. In 1997, I had been working for a technology company, and family business asked for me to come back and help with a computer system. I did that for a few years, and then in 1999, had the opportunity to get into payments. It was the dot-com era. Things were exciting and happening, and decided that I really loved payments and thought it was a great opportunity to be able to go out and be part of a dynamic young company at the time, and sat down with my father and totally understood my decision and wanted to go out and supported it. And it wasn't as a lot of people think that when you're in a family business and you're inside of it that it's difficult to leave. It really wasn't. He was really, really supportive.
So why don't you take us back a little bit so we can go back into some of your history, a little bit of quick description of schooling. Are you a Montrealer from birth? A little bit of that history for us.
I am a Montrealer from birth. I went to Lower Canada College. Then went off to University in the Maritimes, then came back, worked in the family business, as I said. So very much rooted in Montreal, happy to be here, love the city, and it's exciting.
Did you grow up like a lot of other Montreal entrepreneurial kids, working summers and weekends in the family business?
I did. I worked quite a few summers in the family business, shipping boxes and packing things and doing a lot of odd jobs here and there.
And wait,
Sorry, was it a challenge for you to stay in Montreal, or did you find yourself being tempted by Toronto, by the States?
Always tempted by Toronto and the States, but again, having that family business to come back to and having so much family and friends here, it just was very tempting to come back, and fortunately able to find exciting career in area business to be able to stay here.
When you came back from university, you said you spent roughly 2 years in the family business. What kind of functions were you doing within the business?
Primarily putting in a new computer system and business process changes. It was a company that, it's been around, I think, 40 years or so, and, the technology had started to really evolve, and that's where my little bit of background I'd had in technology. So that's really where I focused my efforts.
We'd be remiss if we didn't give you a chance to plug your dad's company, so go ahead.
My father's business is a manufacturer. It's called Diamond Tea Gown. It's been around quite a long time. He's an amazing entrepreneur. I have to say, learned a lot from him.
So maybe give us a few ideas in terms of being able to go off on your own. Obviously, it's not an easy task. What kind of words of wisdom did you get from your parents along the way?
I would say a lot of hard work, having vision, being committed to having a plan, bringing in the right people, surrounding yourself with good people, and I've been able to do that.
Okay, good.
514-790-0991 if you want to join the conversation. Our guest this evening on Today's Entrepreneur is David Swade. He's of Sterling Card Payment Solutions. They help retailers deliver these streamlined payment systems. And David, what kind of retailers do you deal with? Is this small retailers, big businesses? Tell me a bit about your clientele.
I would say it's primarily small to medium-sized businesses, typical chains, 5 to 15 store locations, people with internet or merchants with internet sites. But that's really the target, 5 to 15 location type change.
And when you're talking about the technology that's involved, I assume this is real-time transaction. I assume that you're dealing in foreign currency areas. I mean, for most of us out there that walk into the store and process via our card, we don't see all the mechanics that go behind it.
There's quite a bit of mechanics that go on behind the scenes between essentially taking money off of the consumer's card and putting the money into the retailer's bank account. There's a lot of pieces of the transaction, connecting different countries, different currencies, as you mentioned, and we help facilitate those transactions essentially occurring.
What do you feel in terms of, obviously this is creating different changes in consumer spending patterns. We were talking a little bit earlier off air about the debit card world in terms of Canada and the U.S. Credit card. Kind of a feel, I guess, maybe from you in terms of what that effect has at the retail level.
Sure. Over the last couple of years, as credit's become more difficult for consumers to get, especially in the U.S., you've seen a huge rise in debit transactions. I think almost 40% of transactions in the U.S. are debit now, which is significantly higher than it was 2 or 3 years ago. Canada's always been a highly debit country. We like debit. We're comfortable with Interac and our debit systems. So it's been less of a growth in Canada, but definitely debit has exploded, especially in the U.S.
We'll continue the conversation with David Swade of Sterling Payment Solutions after the break. 514-790-0991. Start Talk on Bell Mobility, and you can also text your questions or comments to 514-800. Today's Entrepreneur, inspiring stories from outstanding business people right here on CJAD. It's 7:15.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome back to Today's Entrepreneur, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. Dan Delmar, along with Michael Newton of Fuller Landau, filling in for Josh Miller, who's literally across the world in Hong Kong right now. Our guest this evening, David Swade of Sterling Payment Solutions, and we're talking a bit about the kind of business you do, David. You're not alone in the business. You do have your partner, Harley. So tell me how you guys came together and how that partnership is working for you.
Sure. In 2008, I was part of the management team at Optimal Payments. We were owned by a public company, and Optimal Group, and they had decided they wanted to get out of the payments business. So I decided, the time was right. I'd been there 8 or 9 years. The time was right to go out on my own, and sure enough, the company wanted to divest of some of these divisions. I'd been managing this Canadian payment division as part of my responsibilities, and I thought, if I could raise the capital to go out and take this company private. This was a perfect private company. It didn't work inside of a big public company. It was too small, but it was the perfect private company for young guys to run and grow and have the long-term, the ability to think long-term. Whereas when you're in a public company, it's very short-term, unfortunately, sometimes it's very short-term thinking. So to meet the numbers, every quarter. So we started to negotiate, and Harley, who's a lawyer by trade, became my lawyer on the acquisition. That's his background, and at the time, he was looking for a change as well, and he liked the vision, he liked the business. We talked a lot about. We've been friends for 30 years, so we talked a lot about getting involved in a business together, and as part of the acquisition, he decided to invest as well and help completed the transaction, and that's how it came together.
So was this a defensive move on your part, or is this, as my father used to tell me, nobody looks after yourself better than yourself move?
I get that question a lot. Who knows what would have happened had I stayed at Optimal and new management came in. I'd like to think that I would have continued there, but at the end of the day, I was really ready for a move and a change. The timing, everything in life I believe is timing, and the timing was perfect for it. And I think it made sense for me to go, and Harley as well, but to go out and do this. And so I don't think it was a defensive. I think it was the right move for everybody at the time, and Optimal wanted out.
Did the business model change the moment that you decided to do the MBO or the management buyout and move out on your own? I mean, moving out of a public company and a rather ominous control, I guess, on a public company onto your own, did you take it in a different direction, or did you just continue the business along what you were doing already?
I think initially we continued, it had been around quite a while, this division, so we continued initially as is, but we had a bigger vision, and the idea was to take this infrastructure, this business, and then expand into different vertical markets, different niche areas, getting more into mobile, we'll talk about later, e-commerce, and other high growth emerging markets, and that's what we did. And
so, of course, the moment you took it private, everything went smooth, everything went simple. It was a big walk in the park. I'm sure there was a few horror stories along the way, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Maybe you can give us a little bit of insight, because I'm sure there's a few people out there that have either started their own business and are scratching their head or thinking of doing it.
No, absolutely. I mean, you go from working in a large company with lots of resources and support staff to, sort of doing a lot of the technology yourself, doing a lot of things yourself. I mean, Harley would do a lot of the accounting stuff. That's out of his comfort zone. I do a lot of the technology out of my comfort zone. You had to do what you had to do to kind of get the business to a level where you could bring people in, which is what we've done.
So no job is too big and no job is too small for today's entrepreneur.
No, I think we changed light bulbs. I think we did whatever we needed to do, really. And look, we had 12 people in a Toronto office, but Montreal was the smaller office, and now we've been able to grow it up. We're 24 people in total, so.
David Swade joins us of Sterling Payment Solutions. After the break, we're going to talk about some of the technology because, as David was telling us off the air, some of it is really, really neat. And he'll explain how in the coming years you'll be able to charge clients from your iPhone. Neat, really little bits of technology like that. So stay tuned for that. Today's Entrepreneur, more of it coming up. It's 7:23 right now on CJAD.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:25 on today's Entrepreneur, presented by Fuller Landau. Dan Delmar, along with Michael Newton of Fuller Landau, filling in for Josh Miller. Our guest this evening, David Swade of Sterling Payment Solutions. And David, we were talking earlier about some of the really cool technology that's coming in ways that business owners can collect money from their clients. Tell me about iPhone technology and how that can change payment in the future.
Yeah, I think it is really exciting. The iPhone has obviously revolutionized the mobile world and very much so in the payment space. Just to give you an example, there's a company that has basically developed a slot where you drop the iPhone into that has an attached card swiper. So think of a taxi driver or a mobile worker who has an iPhone, doesn't want to get a terminal, drops their iPhone into this device reader, swipes the card goes into the phone, out to the payment networks. You can actually sign digitally on your iPhone, and you get a receipt emailed to you or texted to you. No more paper receipt. It's just, I hate paper receipts too. And away you go. So there's some really cool and innovative stuff happening in the mobile payment space.
So what you're basically saying is all those salesmen out there with their expense reports that lose all their receipts are now going to have no excuse anymore.
You got it.
Okay.
You got it.
And I'm sure there must be some security issues too that come along with iPhone payments. I mean, if people can hack into celebrities' iPhones, get their text messages, can that also happen if you're putting your credit card information on a cell phone?
No, I mean you've got these encrypted devices that ensure security, and they're really high levels of security. It's 128-bit SSL. Not to bore you with technology, but that's pretty secure in terms of transmitting credit card information.
And I'm also seeing a lot of restaurants are using wireless technology more, not the iPhone necessarily, but these wireless interact devices. Are you involved with that kind of stuff?
We are. The wireless aspect has been huge for our business because as the card companies have issued cards with a chip and PIN on them, where people have to get PIN numbers, especially in a restaurant environment where the restaurateur doesn't want you to go back to the back of the restaurant to swipe your card. So they'll bring the terminal to your table, you enter your PIN, you get your receipt, and you move on. And it's a more secure environment because you have to have your PIN number in order to process the transaction. So that's what Visa, MasterCard, and the card companies are trying to do, is push chip and PIN.
As we go into the holiday season and everybody starts to spend some money shopping and trying to refuel the economy, obviously, as you discuss, security, fraud is a major issue. I think there's still a massive misconception out there that buying things online is so much more dangerous than going to the store and using your credit card. Reality is, I don't think that's the case anymore.
No, I really don't think that's the case. The card companies have worked very hard with the retailers to put in place, ensure that they're using the top encryption, both online and in retail. And one of the arguments I often make is you could give your credit card number to when you call and order a pizza. That doesn't make it any less or more safe than ordering something online and thinking that someone's going to grab your card information between the time you run a transaction. So it's definitely getting better. The card companies are getting much more focused on the technology to ensure it. And chip and PIN, as an example, has really helped to drive down fraud.
We'll come back and talk more about security with David Swade of Sterling Payment Solutions. If maybe you've had security issues on your payment systems or with your Interac card, your credit cards, David, I'm sure, can address some of these issues. So give us a call at 514-790-0991, Star Talk on Bell Mobility. You can also text your comments and questions to 514-800. Today's Entrepreneur, presented by Fuller Landau, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. Dan Delmar, along with Fuller Landau's Michael Newton, who's in for Josh Miller, who is at this hour probably having lunch, I guess, maybe.
He's probably finishing up breakfast and actually trying to focus his eyes on some semblance of normalcy in the morning on a 13-hour time difference.
Yes, sir. He's in Hong Kong. He'll be back for our next program. It's 7:30 right now.
The opinions of the commentator or commentators are solely those of the commentators and not of CJAD 800 or Astro.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:32. Welcome back to today's Entrepreneur, presented by Fuller Landau. Inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Our business person for this edition is David Swade of Sterling Payment Solutions, and also joining us, of course, is Michael Newton of Fuller Landau, filling in for Josh Miller, who is in Hong Kong at the moment. We're talking about all kinds of new wireless technology in terms of how business owners can charge their clients, the iPhone, wireless Interac devices. But David, you're also saying that you can pay for your purchases, or you will be able to pay from your phones as well. Tell us about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of development around using your mobile phone as a mobile wallet, where basically you're storing your credit card information, and in some cases being able to bill directly to your phone bill. But basically a mobile wallet where you're going to be able to tap your phone onto a terminal. It's going to charge your card, and you're going to be able to walk out the store, and you're going to get a receipt sent to you. So a lot of development around mobile wallets today.
Now, when people listening will hear that and will say, whoa, I mean, that's just too much power to put into a cell phone. I mean, how could you reassure people that this technology down the road will be safe? And what happens, for example, if you lose your phone?
Right. Well, it's very similar today. I don't know if you've ever walked into a Tim Hortons where they've got a PayPass symbol on it looks like a little satellite dish. There's a lot of cards that are being issued today that have these little chips, and you tap your card and you walk out the store. It's the same technology, just put onto a mobile phone, and it all comes down to this encryption that's built around the transaction, so that basically it's a secure transaction. Passwords and things on your phone as well.
Dan, you were talking a few minutes ago about maybe some not so positive sides of the chip and PIN technology. Maybe you want to give us a little insight, and maybe David can solve the problem.
Well, I've had my own experience with this because about a year ago, my bank, which will remain nameless, basically said, forget about the old swiping technology. You have to go with the chip. And then once you get the chip, because I've been a victim of fraud a couple times, and so they said, once you get the chip, all your problems fraud-wise will be solved. So, of course, I got the Interac card with the chip, and maybe 2 weeks later, again, I have a few $100 cleaned out of my bank account. So right now, I'm a bit skeptical when it comes to this chip technology. What's evolving in the next few years, and how do we improve the system?
Yeah, it's a good question. A lot of people are concerned about security, and understandably. Fraudsters are always trying to continually test and find ways to grab cards, and the payment companies are always trying to ensure that they've got the best level of security and protection. And it's a bit of a game. You always have to be going at it. You always have to continue to step up security, and because the fraudsters are always going to try to find ways to crack things and hack into things.
What ultimately is going to be the enticement for most of the consumers to go this route? I mean, certainly on a generational gap difference, it's a lot easier for one of us or one of our kids to move into that world. I have a hard time seeing my mom take her phone and tap it against something in order to walk out the door and buy something. I mean, how are we ultimately going to get through to be able to entice people to use only one technology?
I'm not even sure it's going to be only one technology. I think for a while it'll be a transition, and it'll be different demographics using different technologies and different payment methods. I think it's going to take time, but over time I think it's clear that a lot of people want to walk out with one thing, and they want to walk out often with their mobile phone. And use that for payment if they forgot their wallet. And I think that's what's going to happen in the future. But there'll always be both, for very, very many years, both elements.
Well, so long as there's a way to gain, there's always going to be somebody to try and find a way to get around it. So that's gone on for centuries. I don't think we're going to be able to change that tomorrow.
It sort of makes me think about how far we'll have to adapt to these thieves. I mean, have you guys started thinking about biotechnology, fingerprinting, and stuff like that? Is that down the road?
It's a great question, Dan. A company in the U.S. Over the last 5 years spent a lot of money on biometrics. The challenge with biometrics is taking your fingerprint and using it as a payment method. Problem is being able to store that fingerprint, at a Visa or at a MasterCard so that you can charge a card. So it's that stuff is really, really far out there. I don't know if that answered your question.
Security-wise, I mean, if you look at Nexus, if you go through at the border, you can go through the retinal scan and zip your way through instead of standing in line for half an hour at the customs. And is that are we going to find ourselves moving in that direction, or is that just a little too robotic of the future?
I think it's too robotic. I think, like I said, that company that tried to use your fingerprint essentially to be able to charge your card, it didn't really work out. They spent a lot of money and ended up going bankrupt. So I think mobile is something people are more comfortable with, but stuff like retinal scans and fingerprints, I think it's far out there.
You just raised an issue of that company spending an awful lot of money. So let's rewind a little bit in this hour and go back to starting off on the business. I mean, obviously there's some do's and don'ts out there. A lot of people wondering how you've become successful. If there's any secrets that you'd like to pass on, anything that you would like to share with today's entrepreneur.
I think a couple of the things are. Make sure you have really, really good people around you. Make sure you're well capitalized or as well capitalized as you can possibly be. To finance growth. Have a strategic plan. Have a vision. Have the people, as I said, to help you execute that, and be financed to go out and do what you got to do. Do what you have to do to execute on your plan. I think those are the things for me that were most important.
You hit earlier on probably the biggest, my biggest pet peeve, and also the thing that drives me the most, is the word passion. When you're starting off on your business, a lot of people go into it because they think they had a good idea, but their heart's not in it. So you'd like to speak to that a little bit.
Absolutely. It was one of the reasons that I decided to move into a business on my own and not stay in a family business. I didn't have the passion, and I think passion is so key. You can have a great vision, you can have a great plan, but you have to have the courage, you have to have the passion, and you have to have the people to help you execute and achieve what you want to. Like you said, a lot of people have great ideas. It takes passion, it takes execution, and big believer.
You probably couldn't have picked a worse time in recent economic history, or maybe the last 7 or 8 years, to start a business. You basically spun this out in 2000. The idea, I think, surfaced at the end of 2007. You went for it in 2008. How did you finance it? How did you get it off the ground?
We were able to finance through friends, family, partners. You're right. The timing was not ideal. I would, tell you that, part of the reason that we ended up doing it was because of the timing, though, as well. It was, the company wanted out of it, so that was when we had to. Optimal wanted to get out, so that was when we had to do it. So we had to jump on the opportunity. We knew the credit, situation was what it was, and we were able to negotiate based on, what we saw coming down the line. But look, any business is going to have to go through difficult times in order to ensure it has a sustainable business model. And I think one thing it taught us is make sure if we can get through this, we can get through a lot. And I think it was a good lesson for us.
I mean, obviously, financing has been a major topic for anybody who's starting a business or running a business. The banks have certainly tightened up, or had tightened up. They're starting to come back around again. We're still seeing a lot of pressure out of the U.S. on consumer credit, and where that's going to take us over the next year, we're certainly not. I don't think we're going to see the end of all of this by the time Christmas holidays roll around. Maybe walk through a little bit of the stress of trying to get that off. And never mind the fact that, you came up with the family and you get the money, but personally, like, how does it affect and what kind of pressure do you feel?
I think, the pressure you feel is having, 24 employees that rely on you. I think it's wanting to build something and be successful, and you're always thinking about the business. I live, breathe, and sleep the business, and I think you have to, and I'm sure Harley does, and a lot of our employees do. But it's just, something you're always thinking about. You're always worrying. You're always thinking, how do I grow this thing? How do I keep expenses down? What's the future? Where are we going? And so yeah, it's stressful, but it's exciting at the same time. And, when I left Optimal, every decision took quite a while because we were big, and here we have an opportunity to, if we like something, we want to do something, we go out, we do it. So there's stresses for sure, but there's exciting opportunities as well.
I think you're a little bit like myself, a little bit of an adrenaline junkie when it comes to running on empty. A lot of people work 35, 40 hours a week and complain that they're exhausted at the end of the day. Needless to say, you're no stranger to 70, 80, 90-hour weeks in order to get something off the ground. So, you talked about some of the negative aspects of starting your own business. So we're going to talk about the adrenaline and the stress, but there's got to be some really good aspects to it that keep you going every day.
Absolutely. Seeing the future, seeing what's happening in this industry, seeing us grow our business, seeing us build a exciting company, going into different markets that are fast-paced, fast growth. That's what really gets me excited, and what's nice about being out, as an entrepreneur.
Tell me about, I guess, some of the trials and tribulations you went through at the beginning. And for people out there who may be starting a business, how do you balance your passion with the reality of those first few moments when you're trying to get your name out there and get clients?
It's we had a bit of a base of a business which was very helpful. It helped us with income. It helped us with infrastructure. But I think the key is staying focused on being in the details, building the foundation of the business. And that's what we really tried to do, is make sure we were a solid foundation before we started to grow into different areas. And, we've gone into different markets, but having a solid foundation. But you have to be in the trenches. It's nice to be at 35,000 feet and have a lot of people doing it. But at the end of the day, the key was being in the trenches, setting the foundation. I think we did that. And once we did that, it made my job, a lot easier. We were able to bring in more people. And, now things are on a good path.
On a typical week, walk us through some of the jobs and the tasks that you do in terms of what that split would be. I guess anywhere from sales to management to administration.
It's probably what I like most about the business is the variety. You deal a little bit in sales, marketing, technology, accounting. Sometimes we'll do we've done a few small acquisitions. It's a full gamut, and you have to be on top of all aspects of the business. Everything from operations, like I said, to sales, to marketing, to accounting. You need to have your hands in all over the place and making sure that you're on top of things.
You talked about acquisitions. When you're going out to look, are you looking for a cash flow? Are you looking for a client base? What is, in your mind, what are you looking for?
Today it's primarily cash flow and client base. We feel we've got a good infrastructure to layer on, additional revenue. So that's primarily what it is. I would tell you that, if infrastructure comes with it, technology or, U.S. offices, we look at that too. But primarily it's customers and cash flow.
Coming up, we'll bring in Kevin Ammerman, who is the IT guy at Fuller Landau, and we're going to talk a bit more about online security, especially during the holiday season, and how important that is for consumers and for merchants alike. And David Swade of Sterling Payment Solutions is going to stick around as well. So if you have any questions about perhaps Christmas shopping security, if you're looking to shop in different ways, be it online, Interact, or maybe even from some of these new wireless technologies that David is talking about, you can always give us a call and ask the experts some questions. 514-790-0991, 790-0991. Start Talk on Bell Mobility. And you can also send in your text messages for 25 cents to 514-800. It's 7:45 right now. 7:48 in a moment. We'll talk to Kevin Ammerman, who's the IT director at Fuller Landau, about shopping during the holiday season and about how you can stay secure. So that's coming up in just a second. But first, continuing the conversation with our guest profile this evening, David Swade of Sterling Payment Solutions, and Fuller Landau's Michael Newton, filling in for Josh Miller. So let's continue about, I guess, discussing David's business and how he has to deal, of course, across the border often.
Well, one of the questions that obviously pops up if you're going to live in Canada and work around the world and do business around the world is the Canadian economy is only so big. Obviously, the natural progression is to move into the U.S. where possible. I know you guys have expanded into the U.S. Maybe give us a little bit of a thought process in terms of how you set up, if you have people on the ground, if head office still operates from here, and just maybe walk us through that.
Sure. Yeah. We initially bought the Canadian business, but the idea was to eventually get into the U.S. just because, as you mentioned, it's just 10 times the size. The North American payment market is very much North American wide, and in terms of us being able to service both sides of the border, that was something that was important to us, to build a North American payments company. And so we were able to do two acquisitions, one in 2009 and one in 2010, that helped bring some scale to our business and give us some infrastructure in the U.S. with some people in the U.S. to be able to ship terminals and do things, have a bit of an American presence. But most of our management and decisions are made here in Montreal, and most of our businesses run out of here.
Basically, as you mentioned earlier, that the debit market in Canada is significantly larger than the U.S., where everybody's more into the credit card side of things. Did that play into anything that you were working on cross-border, or is it, as far as you're concerned, it's pretty much the same technology and the same logistics? It's
actually very different. Debit in the U.S. There's 9. Just to give you a sense, there's 9 Interact type networks in the U.S. So it's very, very different. But we saw it as an emerging market. We saw the credit challenge, and we saw debit was exploding, and it was one of the areas that we liked, and one of the reasons we saw the U.S. as a good opportunity.
Now, speaking of debit and credit cards, at this time of year, certainly a lot of people will be using them to buy all kinds of Christmas gifts on this side of the border and on the other side of the border. So I thought we'd bring in the IT director at Fuller Landau, Kevin Ammerman. Welcome back, Kevin.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Thanks. Good.
So at this time of year, obviously, security a big concern to a lot of people. What advice would you give for those who are going to be using their cards constantly over the next few weeks? And what are some things to look out for?
Well, I think that's just it. The security is not really on people's minds at this point. They're very excited, spending lots of money and enjoying all these new avenues to spend money online. And they're not really protecting themselves. So the credit card providers and the different merchants out there are taking steps to make sure that these transactions are secure, and while the transaction is in process, that it's secured from end to end and quite safe. But what about all those phishing systems and scam artists that are out there that are trying to horn in on these, what would otherwise be a happy time of year and take advantage? So, for example, charitable organizations frequently market by email. And a new development that we're seeing is that these phishing scammers are hijacking those campaigns. They're actually taking over the charitable donations, the charitable agencies. And where it used to be banks and financial institutions that were being imitated by these phishing, fraudsters, now it's the charitable and the more benevolent organizations. So things that used to appear to be very safe are not so safe anymore. So you have to be very careful to protect yourself against this kind of thing.
And maybe just ask yourself a lot of questions, and if something seems fishy, just don't take the chance. I mean, I get emails from quote-unquote Visa about my account, and then, for a second, I'm like, wait a second, I don't have a Visa card.
Exactly. And if you're in doubt, you just delete the email. You can always call the organization and complete the transaction over the phone. Look them up in the Yellow Pages. Make sure that they are actually a valid organization. And you don't have, even though they may be soliciting money from you, and it may be a valid organization, you don't necessarily have to use the vector that they've provided, right? So you don't have to reply via email. You can reply via the telephone or track them down yourself to make sure that you're talking to who you think you're talking to.
We'll continue our conversation about security, whether it's credit cards or online, over the holiday break especially. If you want to weigh in or perhaps ask a question, 514-790-0991. Star Talk on Bell Mobility, and a text messaging for 25 cents, completely secure, to 514-800. 753 on Today's Entrepreneur.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Remaining moments on Today's Entrepreneur, presented by Fuller Landau, inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar, along with Michael Newton of Fuller Landau, filling in for Josh Miller, who is finishing up breakfast, I suppose, right now in Hong Kong. Our guests, David Swade of Sterling Payment Solutions. They help retailers with payment systems. And from Fuller Landau, the IT director there, Kevin Ammerman. We're talking a bit about online security, credit card security, especially during this holiday season when people are going to be using their cards so much. And Kevin, as you said, often without thinking of it. So we'll take one call at 790-0991. This is Alan in his car. Hi, Alan.
Hi there. Hi, Mike. Question is for Kevin. The credit card companies offer you insurance against fraudulent use of your credit card. And at the same time, my understanding is that if there is any fraudulent use, they'll cover they won't charge you if it can be proven that it was fraudulent. So why would I accept their offer for this type of insurance?
I may have to redirect your question here. I think we have an expert on hand.
Hi, Alan. It's David. You're absolutely right. Visa and MasterCard have a what's called a zero tolerance or zero liability policy. So if you charge, if your card is charged and it was unauthorized, the consumer is always made whole. So this insurance, maybe it covers something other than that. It's hard for me to know, but yeah, I would agree with you that that you may not need additional insurance, knowing that Visa, MasterCard, Amex, Discover, all have a zero liability policy.
And it was just in the news recently, actually, that the banks are moving in the direction of putting that liability on the consumer. So if people are using their cards, what's some a couple of quick bits of advice, just in case you find yourself in the situation where someone's cleaning out your account?
Yeah, the reason that they're putting the liability onto the consumer is because of chip and PIN. They're saying, if I'm going to give you a PIN number, you need to be careful with it, very much like debit. So that's why the liability has shifted. But what was the second part of the question? Sorry.
Any advice if you're going into many stores over the holiday season to protect yourself?
Just keep your PIN protected, whether you do it online through Verified by Visa or MasterCard Secure Code. They also have online PIN capabilities, just to Kevin's point. Same in a store. Keep your PIN secure if you have it. If not, just make sure that also when you sign your receipt that the full credit card number is not there. Most merchants are expected to X out the receipt to just your last 4 digits. Little things like that go a long way.
Is it better to put your PIN into the slot or to swipe the card?
Oh, definitely into the slot. Don't swipe it if you have a PIN.
Okay, well, David Swade, Sterling Payment Solutions, and Kevin Ammerman, the IT director at Fuller Landau. Gentlemen, thank you so much, and your advice is certainly very helpful during the holiday season. Parting thoughts, Michael?
Yeah, quickly, a couple of things. One is I'm learning that I'm filling in from Josh Miller, so it's a very, very ominous position to be in. So, two, I think listening to David and the family dynamics, I think it's amazing to see that how the openness working between the family has led to a big success. And I think the key at the end of the day, as anything we do, revolves around passion. If you're going to go start your own business, if you're going to coach a hockey team, whatever that is, make sure you take that passion with you. I think that's the key to success at the end of the day. You can overcome an awful lot of hurdles in 70, 80-hour weeks if you really, really enjoy what you're doing.
Thank you, Michael Newton. You can reach Fuller Landau during business hours at 514-875-2865 or visit them online at flmontreal.com. Friendly Fire is next.